So it was over before it started. Just like the Dan versus Dave saga of the 1992 Olympics, where the Dan and the Daves didn't compete against each other, we have the same situation. So Dan has decided to end the debate versus Dave. He has concluded his arguments on his mock debate, and he has decided to shut flat earthers up, not just Dave, but all flat earthers up once and for good with his final conclusion. Now, Dave is explaining the flat earth model, and I thought it was very interesting. So Dan, instead of refuting the flat earth model like they like to do, they like to say that the sun is impossible on our model, what we experience with the sun, or what we're saying the sun is doing on the flat earth model. It just isn't possible. That's how they usually argue it. No, that's just not true, and it's very unscientific, and they say things that aren't true, and I believe that's why Dan has probably stopped using this argument. So the scientific community will argue flat earth way different than what the debunkers will do. The debunkers will actually try to go in and refute flat earth points, which is very dangerous if you're not lying. If you're not lying, you have to admit, yeah, it's possible to live on a flat plane. Yes, perspective will answer the issues of the sun. On top of that, it's very apparent that the sun is moving and that it creates our seasons. Whether it's the tilt of the earth or not, and if it's the earth spinning around the sun, that creates our seasons. The sun is so powerful. That's why people historically worship the sun. But Dan doesn't do that in this episode. Dan does not do that. He doesn't revert to the sun. I thought he was going to revert to the sun. So the first episode was lights in the sky. Therefore, there's lights in the sky. The earth is in the sky too. That's what they're saying. The ancients always said, no, the earth is special. The earth is different. The earth is life itself. What is that earth? Where does the earth sit? Where does it come out of? We don't know. We don't know. It comes out of the abyss, but the abyss is a god. It's a power. It's something we don't know. We're not allowed to know, or we'll steal it. The heathens steal it through worshiping the earth. That's self-worship. A heathen is a self-worshipper. The pagans are star worshipers, and they created existence out in the heavens, and they stole the heavens by saying, through this thing called matter and energy, boom, we have life. And we're just like that matter and energy. The earth is just like the lights in the sky, and they add this thing called gravity. Now, we can't test gravity. We just say things are. We say buoyancy and density answer your question for gravity. Things just are. If it's heavier than the air, then it falls. Like everything is heavier than the air, so it just falls. Dan comes back and says, no, they fall at the same speed in a vacuum where there's no air. Okay, well, we don't live in a vacuum. We do have air, and on top of that, when you do take the air out, yes, but it's because there's no force pulling on it. Like, you could say that argument the other way, like, it's just as apparent that there's no gravity. There's just no proof of a force. We don't need things to be pulled down. There is cause and effect, and if there is no cause, then there won't be an effect. So now we have the model. So Dave's explaining the flat earth model. I say land out of water. The water's flat, and then the land sometimes is a plain. There's mountains, there's hills, there's valleys, but it comes out of this water. Above us is a sky, and then there's something below us. We don't know about that something below us. Dave referred to a Richard Byrd quote where he said, there's more land the size of America. Now, he said it other times too. Dave is a big more land guy. Now, on the Gleason map, it shows more land around. Now, that's, Antarctica. I like to call it the Richard E. Byrd ice wall. Now, flat earthers started saying, there's an ice wall containing us. And then Dave kind of pushes back and says, there's more land. I agree with him. I am an ice wall guy. I like talking about the ice wall. I just call it the ice wall. But yeah, I think he's right. There's more speculation of land. There is most likely more land, but we don't know. We have seen ice shelves. Is that what's containing the waters? Probably not. It is probably more land. He is right on that. But where I push back is, then why are you always doing curvature experiments? Why are you always calling Netflix and the news and any other mainstream organization that just wants to hide the fact of this existence? Why don't you go there? You got money, man. You're rich. Why don't you go there? Why don't you show us where it is? Why don't you show us that it is there? If you're such a more land guy, then David, why don't you go? Why do you want to fly gyroscopes in the equator. That's what he wants to do. I emailed him and I said, hey man, let's set up a trip and let's take some flat earthers and let's film it and let's do the next level movie there. Let's go to the ice wall. Let's go to the North Pole. It's right there. It's a 2-hour flight from New Zealand and it's like a 4-hour flight from Alaska. We can just go. He won't do it. He doesn't want to do it. So that baffles me. But other than that, he's spot on with everything he's saying. Now, Dan comes back, and does Dan refute the flat earth model like I thought he was going to, with using the sun and saying sun falling out of perspective is just not possible? That's usually what they say, and then they say because it would change its angular resolution, but it does change its your angular resolution with the lensing effect, and it just does. It does change its size. So he must have listened to my channel and realized, hey, I don't want to do that one because I'm going to get debunked, because he's gotten debunked by me hundreds of times. So what does he do? What does he resort to? He resorts to a video, to a documentary from mainstream science that says flat earthers disproved Behind the Curve. The Netflix documentary Behind the Curve documents flat earthers going to a flat earth conference, and then Jaron, who's a well-known flat earther, might be a shill, does a curvature experiment, and they say that disproves. So if you've watched the documentary, you kind of see what happens, and Jaron has explained what happened. What happened was they were shooting a laser. The people that were on the other side of the laser said, hey, where's the laser? And they're like, look up, and it was up in the sky. It looked like he was shooting it up in the sky, but he was shooting it straight. There was non-flat earthers there, and they were saying, that's weird. The flat earthers were there, were saying, yeah, that's kind of what we thought might happen, because that's what happened in the Samuel Robotham experiment when they did the Bedford level tests. The light just, there is no ether, there's no container holding the light, but there is air. So then based on your perspective, yeah, you just see the light and it looks like it's in the sky. I was walking home the other night and I saw this big bright light and I thought it was shining on me, and it wasn't that far away, and I walked up and it was shining like not even towards me, but it looked like it was shining at me because it's just like in the air. It was a flashlight. A guy had broken down in his car and he was shining the light, and I was walking in that direction, and it was kind of shining in my direction, but it was just there, and you're gonna perceive it to be different based on your vanishing point. Not really like a perspective issue as the same with the sun setting, but it is not always going to it's not always going to travel where you think it's going to travel. It's not like laser tag where you can shoot the light and then hit someone. It's where it's at, and then it illuminates to you, and it doesn't necessarily travel in the air like you think it's going to travel in the air. But it also disproves that the Earth is moving. You can look into that, and the mainstream scientists admit that the light in the air, looking at it in interferometers, prove that the Earth is not moving. They do say that. They say it in those words. If there wasn't the flat earth discussion, they'd be like, yeah, we have no proof. It's just an assumption. We just have to assume. So he uses that documentary, he uses that clip of Jaron that was definitely edited and taken out of context. And it was clear that they did. Now, Dave has probably done the most work at refuting that documentary, and he was at the event, but he wasn't really featured in the documentary that much. But he's come out for those guys and said, hey, this is what happened. Bob, who's passed away, who isn't able to refute the arguments about what he did with the gyroscope. There's just no proof that he had a gyroscope, and there's no proof that he actually tried to do the experiment. Did he say those words? I don't know. Was it taken out of context? Was it edited? I don't know. I emailed him personally, and he didn't get back to me. And now he's dead, and he can't say what happened. I believe they're just selling out for fame. I believe the Netflix people are calling them, the news are calling them, and they're saying, hey, you're a flat earther, we want to do a piece on it. And they're saying, great. They might say, hey, can you make sure you like not edit me out of context and do that kind of thing? And they tell you straight up, like, sign this piece of paper, we own this product. We're going to film what we're going to film, and you have to be happy with what we put out no matter what. That's basically how it works. I was contacted by Netflix to do a documentary, and that's basically how it went. They wanted to do it on mental health. They told me straight up, it's going to be on mental health. And I was like, that's fine, but we're going to, you got to make sure you put the flat earth truths in there. Land out of water, the water's flat, there's no proof of a curve. And They said, yeah, of course. And I said, oh, to make sure of that, I'm going to be in the editing room when you edit the movie. And they said, huh? I said, I want a producer credit and I get to edit the movie with you. And they said, no, we can't allow that. And I said, well, then I'm not going to do it. I said, on top of that, I want money up front and I want part of the movie of us going to the lands beyond the poles, either the north or the south. And they said, no, we can't do that either. And I said, then I'm not going to do your movie. These other guys are like, yeah, we'll do it. It's a lot of fame. It's a lot of shine for my channel, and I'll do it. And that's what Jaron is doing, and that's what David is doing. And yeah, they're shows. They're shows. It's just there's just no way about it. I mean, they're just shows. This is the number one proof for Globers that the Earth is not flat. Is this video now? This movie. This movie is so damaging to Flat Earth, and Jaron and Bob were like, oh, whatever, it's good promotion for Flat Earth. No, it's not. It's absolutely damning when you have dumb people willing to believe anything the mainstream money promotes. They take a clip of that clip and they believe it. They don't want to look into Flat Earth. They just want to energetically believe in what the thing that gives them power. And Globe Earth gives you power. Globe Earth allows you to believe that you can become a god, that you can become a creator. You can create new worlds through believing in this system. That's basically what they believe. They believe the Earth does it, but they believe by connecting to the Earth and connecting to the universe that they're a part of that system. That's what it is. And these shills of Flat Earth then kind of do the same thing by, they're going to be promoted. They're going to be on top. There's millions of people that believe the Earth is flat. There's only a handful that do this full time. And then those people kind of try to steer the arguments and they try to steer the discussion. Now, Dan is using Dave, and Dave is like, hey, yeah, use me. Like, Dave would debate Dan in a second. He would get in a room with him and debate him, no questions asked. I mean, there's obviously no doubt in my mind that he would debate the guy. But Dan won't debate Dave because he knows he'll get destroyed. He has to keep it in a controlled situation. He has to control the setting in order to win the argument. And that's what you saw with this conclusion. Instead of doing what he usually does and say, oh, the sun disproves a flat earth model because the sun doesn't disprove a flat earth model. And too many people are looking into the sun and going, oh, wow, it's not 93 million miles away. Why isn't outer space lit up if the sun's 93 million miles away? The light doesn't travel in a container. It doesn't travel in like a tube and then just the thing it's shining on gets light. It just illuminates. We see that with Jaron's experiment. We see it kind of light up the sky. It doesn't travel where you think it's going to go. But it also, it didn't prove that there's a curve. That experiment does not prove that it's a curve. The Bedford level experiment doesn't prove that it's a curve. It doesn't satisfy the experiment they were trying to do, the hypothesis they were trying to do that there isn't a curve. I think the only way to do a curvature experiment is to measure from the bottom up. And you can measure from the bottom up. And what does Dan say about the sea level? So we measure from the bottom up. You take the bottom and you measure to the top. And then you take the bottom over somewhere else and measure to the top on a string. And you just keep doing it. And you see if there's a differentiation in the amount you've to reach the top, to reach your rope. So you have a stick on a buoy, and then you use a laser and you measure up to the rope. And then over there, it's the same height, and you measure over there. And you subtract the difference. And that's your slope. That's your curve. That's your differentiation in height. They say there's a 20 centimeter difference between the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. They say there's a centimeter difference because of the algae in the water and the density of the water. And we're talking about a centimeter. Centimeter. For those that do inches, that's like a smudge. That's like a pinch difference. And they say it's because of density in the water. That could be true. That actually could be true. Where you see the Atlantic meet the Pacific, you see two different kinds of water. And you see them split. And you do see it flat. Now, a centimeter of a difference isn't really a difference. With curvature, we're talking about miles of differential. We're talking about hills and mountains of water curving. And Dave is correct. There is no up or down, left or right on a ball. It's the center of mass. Everything is the center of mass. In mass, out of mass. In of north, out of north. The center of north, it's curvature. If I'm here and you're here, you're not necessarily here. You're down here. You're in. You could be going southeast, but you're going into the center of mass on a ball. And that's just not what we experience. We experience west of north, east of north, south of north. Everything is off of north, and the north is in the center. But Dan doesn't want to get into that. He doesn't want you to see the model. He doesn't want to see you that this is rational and that this just makes sense. He doesn't want you becoming a flat earther. So he points to a Netflix documentary that deflects. This documentary was about the psychology behind flat earthers, and they profiled Mark Sargent going to a flat earth conference. That's all it was. It was not very informative about flat earth. You hardly learned anything about flat earth. And then they profiled Jaron's experiment, and they didn't show him do the experiment really. I mean, they heard him talk about it a little bit, do it a little bit, but there wasn't much about the experiment. It was definitely cut up. And then they had Bob talk about his experiments. Didn't show any work of Bob. This gyroscope that Bob was buying was $20,000 or something like that. Never showed the gyroscope. That experiment was done by the Navy, and you can't find any work of the experiment. You can't see any pictures of this gyroscope. You can't see any pictures of it in use. There's just no evidence that they actually did this experiment with this gyroscope. Gyroscopes usually prove flat earth, and usually flat earthers like to use gyroscopes to prove that. But in this case, I just said, it provided a drift when they didn't show their work. And it's really, really, really frustrating. And it's really frustrating that these flat earthers won't just go to this ice wall. Because that's how you prove it. That's how you prove it to everybody. That's the only way to prove it, is to go there. And they just won't do it. They just won't do it. And I don't have enough money to go yet. I'm working on it, and I should be getting there soon, and that's the plan. And I'm going to prove it once and for all. And it would be awesome if the flat earthers would go with me, and I'm willing to make amends, and I'm willing to stop calling them shills if they're willing to come. But they're just not willing to come. They want to make it about themselves, and they want to make it about their fame. So that concludes the series of Dan versus Dave. I believe Dave won the debate because he is on the side of truth. And yeah, if they did meet and they did debate, I think Dave would have no problem refuting Dan. Dan isn't very scientific. He just repeats what other people say, and he's not a very good debunker. The mainstream people on Google, Mrs. Allen, who runs Google, seems to like him, so she seems to promote him. Mrs. Allen also promotes Dave. Behind the scenes, Mrs. Allen runs Google. She has all their phone numbers, and she runs it like a little cult, and you got to play by her rules, otherwise, they deplatform you, and they don't put you in the good algorithm, and that's basically what's going on. So Dave, flat earth side, is just as much as a shill as Dan, and it just turns out it was another Dan and Dave battle for sponsorships. That's all it really is about at this point. It's just about sponsorships and about shows, and not really about the truth. Although Dave does a pretty good job of going against his cult leader, Mrs. Allen, tells the truth, and he did a pretty good job. His presentation is pretty good, and a lot of people are waking up to the truth. So I try not to be too hard on Dave, but I just know things behind the scenes. He didn't use the Gleason clock on his flat earth map. He used the zodiac, and that's very troubling. The zodiac doesn't really have anything to do with flat earth, and the zodiac is an engraven image. When you look at those stars, you don't see those animals. You see lights in the sky. The Gleason clock, the time calculator, does show the sun on a plane, and it does prove that map as well, and he got a patent for it as well. It 100% proves that map, and it proves that the sun travels on a plane, over a plane, and he doesn't use it on his app. And he charges like $10 a year for it, and it's just kind of a silly, stupid app. So, and that's all he's there to do. He's just there to sell his app. After 2016, so a quick history of the modern flat earth is Eric Dubay came out with a documentary in 2015. Before 2015, people were already understanding this thing called geocentrism, but we didn't really understand the branding of it. We didn't understand the words of it. Then Eric Dubay came out with the history of flat earth, and then everybody was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. It's flat earth. And then after that, Eric's channel got taken away in 2016, and then a bunch of shills came along. a bunch of shills, and then they, taught flat Earth. They do an okay job of it. They're not like they do believe the Earth is flat. That's the thing, but they're just doing it for the wrong reasons. They're not doing it because it's just amazing and they think it's cool, and they're not doing it even if they wouldn't make money, and they're not doing it even if they would get killed for it. Others are willing to do it even if we get killed, even if we don't make a dime from it. And Dave's not one of those people. So, but he did win the debate, and his presentation's really good. He just really irritates me with his stupid app. But other than that, yeah, he did a great job. And Dan it's ridiculous. His arguments are ridiculous, and that's why he won't meet in person. He'll never debate Dave. So the saga continues, but it ends with the Dan and Dave rivalry.